So we are welcoming Rebekah Visco with us today. Tell you a little bit about her before she tells us more about herself. Rebekah's been a member of UUCC since 2010 and a UU for 35 years. I did not know that. Where else were you a UU? You'll talk about it, right? Rebekah's enjoyed many different roles at UUCC. She served on the board, was involved in creating our current mission and vision statements, and most recently served on the ministerial search team. Her favorite role, though, is as an Our Whole Lives or OWL facilitator. She is a urology nurse and enjoys lots of things that she incorporates into her spiritual life, and she is joining us to tell us all about that today. So please welcome Rebekah Visco. Yay.
So I have done Credo before. I realize it's been about 6 years, which it seems like longer than that, but the pandemic made everything about twice as long. I will say, so I'm always fascinated by where people come from. Obviously I'm not native to Charlotte, so I'm originally from the Midwest, St. Louis. But I spent most of my life growing up near Philadelphia. And then we've been here for about 15 years now. So now Charlotte's home. So I'll give you a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of my background and then kind of what I sort of use as my, my short version of my credo. So to start off with, I was raised by atheists. We never went to church when I was a kid. My mother, my adopted father, and my biological father had all rejected the faith traditions that they were raised in. I was never baptized. My great-grandmother had no problem telling my parents explicitly that I was going to burn in hell because I wasn't baptized. So I was very quiet as a child. I liked to read. Somehow I got my hands on all kinds of interesting reading material. I desperately wanted to learn and understand the world and my place in it. I never, as a kid, I really didn't understand, the relationship between spirituality and religion. And I was fascinated by lots of world religions. I learned at some point that my maternal grandmother had studied Buddhism. So, I wanted to learn as much as I can, but it's very clear to me at a young age that none of them had all of the answers, right? And I had lots of questions. I still, and as the older I got, I only had more questions, and that's still true. So at some point in my teenage years, my mom very randomly began church shopping. I really did not understand it at all. She dragged us, me and my sister. We went to some very, very strange places and some very boring services, and I was not really having it until we visited a local UU church, Washington Crossing, New Jersey. And I knew nothing about this. I know I looked young, but this is before the internet, so I did not know anything about Unitarian Universalism at that time. And I was very intrigued. And I pretty much immediately knew that I was home. And just the idea of a place where we didn't all have to believe exactly the same thing, but that we could encourage and learn together. And, that was kind of it. So it was a perfect fit, and particularly at that time, so that we were at that congregation really from like 15 to 18 until I went to college. That UU community really offered love and acceptance and a safe place to exist. I didn't have really anywhere else in my life. So this is the third congregation that I've been a member of, and I've had lots of opportunities for spiritual growth, both within these communities and elsewhere. And a lot of you have played a big and small role of my journey. And really, it's been about finding new ways of experiencing things and new ways of looking at life. That's really, really difficult, right? Especially as we go on, it's easier. I feel like as you get older, you get in some ways even more ingrained in the things that you're comfortable with and that feel good. But learning how to let go of some of those things, even things that I've held very dear, has been really where I found when the magic starts to happen. So I experienced what I would consider my first most significant spiritual awakenings, probably early in adulthood. So addiction and alcoholism have had a deep impact on my family. And like many others, I've found the spirituality of 12-step programs very helpful in learning how to deal with difficult situations. So it was in recovery rooms from the family disease of alcoholism that I found that I didn't really need an exact idea exact definition of God in order to experience what I think of as God. And I also didn't have to call it anything I didn't want to. So I had to let go of the expectations that I had about what spirituality is, what God is or isn't, the labels that I use, labels that others might use for me. I've always been very obsessed with words and language. I've been a writer most of my life. And it was very disconcerting to suddenly find that I had no way to really describe some of my experiences, and I still don't. So all I know is that it really opened up ways of seeing and being in the world that I really could never have imagined. And that's where those unexpected connections start to form, right? So I got my first bachelor's degree at Temple University in mathematics. And I always loved math and I was pretty good at it. I mean, not a mathematician or anything, but I was captivated by calculus, sacred geometry, real and imaginary numbers, and fractals all around and within us. My second bachelor's degree is in nursing, where the complexities of the human body fascinated me even more. As much as we learn about our bodies and the intricate relationships of internal and external systems, there is still so much more that we don't know and don't understand. So when I look for connections, I find them. When I'm open to new ways of connecting other people and other living things, it appears. So whether it's appreciating the physics behind a baseball, connecting with the baseball bat at the perfect angle and velocity to send it over the fences, to the glow of a sunset over a field of sunflowers, bowing with their perfectly imperfect seed patterns and bright petals, the creativity and power of the written and spoken word, the intensity of emotion stirred by music that can only be expressed through dance. Most of you, I love to dance. I've been a nurse for quite some time now. So we as part of when we moved here, is when I started nursing school. And as you might imagine, it's both extremely rewarding, but it's also the hardest thing I've ever done. I can't fix people. Suffering is pervasive. The reward from nursing comes for me from truly being present for others wherever they are on their healing journey. Most of the patients that I deal with, we're never going to be perfectly healthy and healed. It's a process. I feel very blessed to play even a small role in hopefully easing suffering in some way, but also giving others the space for healing. Like it's a powerful thing. Again, indescribable, but very powerful. I will never know what other people experience. I have felt very fortunate to we live in a large urban area. I've started my career in a very large hospital where I got to meet people from all different backgrounds with lots of very, very different life experiences from my own, which I'm never going to understand everybody else's experiences, but I can experience compassion, which is motivation to work for a more just and equitable world. I've seen nothing more powerful than community working together, and especially trying to provide for those that are most vulnerable among us. So I get now why people use the word God. I did not use that word for most of my life. I do now. I use other words too, but I know it means different things to different people. That's okay with me. For me, it encapsulates just basically the essence of what it means to be human and alive on this earth at this moment, and how all beings can be and are connected to each other. But life isn't all about me or what I think or how I see things. I find that life is much brighter for me when I place a lot less focus on myself. So this is evolving all the time, and I make changes to it all the time. I made changes to it 10 minutes ago, but this is my sort of evolving encapsulated credo. I give my heart to love. For me, God is love. All people have a deep need and capacity to give and receive love. The love is to recognize, respect, and cherish the humanity and divinity of others and all life forms. We love ourselves. We love one another as individuals. We also love in communities. We love by practicing inclusive compassion and working to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to thrive and live an authentic life. Love is extending ourselves for the purpose of nurturing the life and spiritual path of others. Love requires recognizing and cherishing the inherent worth and dignity of all. Love requires commitment and accountability. Loving is an active choice. Love sometimes requires boundaries. Love requires us to embrace our human emotions and the ability to laugh, to cry, to sing, to praise, to rage, and to sometimes feel incredible pain and hurt. Love requires joy. To love is to take risks in order to grow, even if it means letting go of things that we might hold dear. We never stop seeking a better version of ourselves. Love requires each of us to seek and know our own truth, recognizing that we each know but a piece of the truth. Love requires that we continue to learn and be open to new ways of understanding. Love requires that we live our truth with certainty, and at the same time know that there is little that can be known for sure. Love requires respect for the limits of human understanding. Love requires that we love through fear. Love requires gratitude for the gift of life. Gratitude includes finding joy whenever possible, never failing to acknowledge the infinite beauty of this world. Love is liberation from all that keeps us from realizing our potential. Loving requires acceptance of one another. Love calls for high expectations and an endless capacity for forgiveness when we fall short. Nothing is more powerful than exponential love. Loving is extremely difficult and nothing less than holy. It is love to which I give my heart. God is love. May it be so.
Thank you so much. Do people have any questions, follow-up questions?
Did she create what she just talked to us about in the last 10 minutes?
All of it. In the last 10 minutes.
I mean, all the definitions of love.
Yes, that was,
But yeah, so some of that, so like I said, some of that is from when I did my Credo last time, and I'm constantly kind of, changing it and tweaking it and adding new things, and that's the fun part of this.
So to piggyback on that, did you see any drastic or just incremental changes from the Credo from 6 years ago?
Both. I really was
Really?
surprised when I looked at it. I was like, okay, a lot of this still holds true, but there's also it's fun to reflect on how
Right.
much things have changed, and how much I have grown just in that short time.
How did nursing influence your spirituality from when you were in math and then when you were in nursing?
So it's funny. I really, so like I was good in math, but biology was never my best subject when I was in high school, and I didn't take any biology in my first go around in college, and I really it was completely off my radar. I took physics, that's kind of what I focused on. And, so it was very interesting when I started nursing, and I do really appreciate like this time of when I went to nursing school and how nursing has evolved. And, we were really taught a very holistic approach to nursing. And it's very like, I mean, I was very surprised, honestly, like there's different, not to get too into the weeds, but there are like different nursing theories and different nursing theorists out there. And the hospital I worked at, our nursing theorist that we had chosen, her theory was about caring science, and it was very detailed about like and it was all very much about connection, like I mean, I'm like, learning all this stuff. I'm like, this, fits into my, my UU world like this. And it just really, it strengthened a lot of what I already had learned and experienced kind of being a UU. But it really even, deepened it even more. And especially, I think the biggest probably impact is, being present, at end of life, really, changes your perspective. And it certainly makes you appreciate, a lot more. And that's probably the biggest impact, but it's interesting how it really does all tie together.
Let me actually just ask one additional question to that, and then which is, did you have to, you deal in terms of our pluralism, did you have to deal with people in their own, wherever they were at spiritually?
Yeah, and
did that help?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's, and that's what I said, it's interesting because I have patients from all different backgrounds, people that I have a lot in common with and very little in common with. And I think that's really helped me, like you said, meet people where they are, but accepting, things where I don't have to, like everything about you, or, but but you treat everybody with the same kindness and compassion, and you learn from everybody.
What practice setting are you in now?
So I worked inpatient for many years,
Yeah.
including through the pandemic. So I work outpatient now. I work at a urology practice, which has its own,
Yeah.
its own
Wow.
yeah.
Kathleen. So I'm going to allow you right now to give a plug for the Our Whole Lives program by asking you what that has to do with your spirituality, Rebekah.
So, as some of you are familiar with the program, so my favorite thing about it is it really talks about, our whole lives, right? Is that we're sexual beings literally from birth, until the end. And that encapsulates, just everything that it is about our humanity is, is part of us. And it goes back to like, the holistic approach. And I love that it's really the biggest focus is about relationship with yourself, relationship with family, friends, anybody. And that's really, and seeing kids, starting to learn about that stuff when they're, first grade, and having those conversations with their peers, having real meaningful conversations, and then, watching them grow. My kids were fortunate to go through all the OWL levels, and seeing that evolve and seeing them learn about ways, relationships and how to have healthy relationships. That's just huge to your health overall. So yeah, y'all know I love.
Anything else? Anything on Zoom?
Yes. Describe the dynamics between doctors and nurses in your current situation.
Wow.
In 30 seconds.
It's a whole other presentation. I'm very fortunate. All the providers that I work with are pretty fantastic. And I would say that's kind of across the board. Even in the hospital, it was pretty good. I think again, nursing as a profession has evolved so much that there's a lot more respect for nursing than, you know, maybe in the past. The main, I mean, because really the most important thing that we do, has anyone ever seen that movie Hero, was it Heroes, Big Hero 6?
Big Hero 6.
Yeah, so like that, you know, watching that movie, like what that robot did was he was constantly assessing and trying to figure out what was going on with the kid. And I was like, that's what I do. I mean, that's what, you know, 'cause we spend the most time with patients and we're constantly trying to figure out, you know, what's going on, what's changed. And most of the providers that I work with are pretty fantastic. What's funny is the one of the providers I work with specializes in male fertility. And so I've learned a lot about fertility in the last couple of years. But we work really closely together and you know, we text and all that. So yeah, we have great providers that we work with.
Anything else on Zoom?
That's the same person asks, what section of Philadelphia did you grow up?
So we live most of the time in Bucks County, which is just kind of north, very close to Trenton, New Jersey. And yeah, so my parents actually have just relocated. They were still living up there. We just moved them to Charlotte a few months ago. But yeah, that's Bucks County.
So you went to Washington Crossing and you said there were 3 congregations.
Yeah, so after, so we were Washington Crossing when I was a teenager, and then after college, we joined the Lower Bucks Fellowship. It was very small. We went from 75 members and then we came here. A whole different ballgame. Anything else?
Yeah, I was sort of interested, when you went to the 12 steps program, there must have been a shift in how you saw yourself and your relationship in the world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's probably, I mean, as a young adult and I was fortunate that I started going to Al-Anon when I was fairly young. It's been 20 years now. I still go. But yeah, it really helped me focus on, I think, you know, there's, you know, I was thinking about this even during the service today, like, you know, so there's so much that demands our attention, there's so many responsibilities, and trying to sort through, you know, what are my problems to solve and what are not. That's probably the biggest focus. Because Al-Anon really helps me focus on me, the things that I can control, what I can't control. And that actually allows me to have a lot more like impact in making the difference where I can make differences and setting boundaries and that sort of thing. But it really, I was at a point where I was kind of open for, you know, something, you know, I was like, I need some help, something different, doing something different. And hearing other people's stories and sharing common experiences really helped give me, like, it was another communities, right? So what I didn't know as a teenager was that I was experiencing, you know, spiritual community, and how important that was. I couldn't describe it at the time. I just knew that I felt, you know, better when I left there. That's pretty much it. But as, you know, as an adult, I realized how much I need that. And it was another community where it's very safe, you know, safe place. And so I could, and, you know, the other thing about 12 steps, they don't tell you what to do. Like, they don't give you any answers. You still have to figure it out for yourself. But you're given space and trusted to find the right answers for you, not for anybody else. And so yeah, it's had a huge impact on my spiritual growth. That's when I really started kind of opening up to new ideas, and not just, you know, I was raised so much with reason and logic and science, which I love all of that. But learning how to like really experience more than that spirituality in different dimensions really unlocked a lot for me.
One last question, if anybody has one.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks again.